Thank you, and welcome members and any members of the public watching. I'm Councillor Tom Anderson, the Chair of the Tourism, Communities, Culture and Leisure Committee. This is a new committee. I will ask that members and officers, when they first speak, to introduce themselves and what position they hold, just so for the members of the public aware of who people are. Can I remind members to keep their microphones muted and their cameras off until they are invited to speak? And I'll move to Mr. Hughes, our legal officer, now to do a roll call.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. If I could start with the roll call, and when a councillor's name is called, please turn your camera on, declare your presence, and then turn your microphone off, please. So starting Councillor Tom Anderson.
I'm here.
Yes. Councillor Andy Corkhill. Andy Corkhill.
I'm present.
Okay, thank you. Helen Cameron.
Helen Cameron, present.
Yeah. Jenny Johnson. Jenny Johnson. I haven't got a reply yet from... Oh, yes.
Jenny Johnson, present, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Jones. Chris Jones.
Hello, yes, I'm
Yes,
present.
yes, okay.
Evening.
Councillor Brian Kenny.
Yeah, Councillor Brian Kenny, present.
Okay,
Thank
very
you.
good. Councillor Terry Povall.
Hello, Councillor Cherry Povall, present.
Councillor Paul Stuart.
Good evening, Councillor Paul Stuart, present.
Okay, Councillor Stuart, yes, thank you. Councillor Joe Walsh. Joe Walsh.
Good evening, Councillor Joe Walsh here.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Jerry Williams.
Councillor Jerry Williams, present.
Okay, thank you. That's a roll call, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. So apologies for absence of received none. We're all present. So I'll move on now to item number 3, members' declaration of interest. Does any member have a declaration of interest? No. Okay. In that case, I'll move on to item number 4, public questions. We have received none. There's been no statements or petitions received. But before I go on to members' questions, remiss of me, I should have given the webcast notice. So just to inform everyone that this meeting will be webcast and recorded and retained on the council website. For those at home viewing the webcast, I would like to inform you that if you look above the video, you will see a resources tab. Select this tab and a link to the agenda will appear in the right-hand side. This will allow you to open the agenda in the PDF form and follow the discussion and debate. So apologies, I should have said that earlier. So item 4C is members' questions. I have received an urgent question that I've allowed from Councillor Andy Corkhill. So Councillor Corkhill, do you want to ask your question?
Thank you, Chair. Members may be aware that myself and fellow councillors have received a number of correspondence over the last few days from local residents and athletics groups who regularly use the Oval Leisure Centre's outdoor running track. They are very anxious to get back to using the facilities that provide a great escape and some respite from our current living conditions. While some preparation may be needed for the use of the track, is there any reason why it can't be brought back into use, even whilst the Oval is used for essential medical appointments? Thank you.
Okay, so that falls in the standing orders for me to answer. Just before I do, I see a hand up, and that's Councillor Williams. There's no provision for on the night urgent questions, Joe. Right, your hand's gone down, so I'll take it you don't want to.
Sorry, Tom, I did that by mistake. My apologies.
Okay, no worry. Okay, well, thanks, Councillor Corkhill, for your question, and I received an email today, actually, concerning the same issue. Members will be aware that early last week, the government announced that gyms in Liverpool City region to open on the 23rd of October. And having spoken to officers today, this subsequently moved as a priority to make available gymnasium and swimming offers to Wirral residents, those young people and organised clubs. 2 facilities were reopened on Saturday, the 24th of October, with more scheduled to come online in the next few weeks. Officers are aware that both the athletics facility and artificial football provisions at the Oval are really valued by residents and are working hard to understand what's required to reinstate these facilities, either together or separately, and as soon as practically possible. The reinstatement to date has been impacted by the use of facilities as a COVID support centre throughout the pandemic. However, the occupiers now are set to vacate the premises by the end of October 2020. Members should be aware that the Council is supporting the winter vaccination programme for flu and or COVID-19 through the utilisation of the internal facilities both at the Oval and Leasover Leisure Centre. However, use of these centres for vaccinations is not expected to impact on the provision of the outdoor facilities. So I understand people's frustration. Everyone wants them open as soon as possible, and hopefully it'll be done as soon as practicable. So I hope that answers your question, Councillor Corkhill. Of course, we'll provide written updates as soon as we have them with fixed dates.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Corkhill. There's no other notices been received, so I will move on to item number 5, which is the management of Campervans scrutiny review. This was a review done by the former Business Scrutiny Committee and was chaired by Councillor Rennie. So I'm going to invite Councillor Leslie Rennie to talk through the report and its recommendations. Leslie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you particularly for the invitation to present this scrutiny report tonight. I'm sure you've all had a copy of it and will have looked through it, and most of you, I do apologise, will probably have heard me banging on it any opportunity I got to get this problem sorted, particularly within my ward, but also to assist colleagues in the New Brighton ward. It does say in the report that complaints were starting to be received in 2017. It actually goes back to before that date, probably by a further 3 years, that residents had been complaining about the number of campervans. But just before I get into it, if I could just say a number of thanks as well. As I say, it has taken over 5 years, and there's been a number of officers who've come and gone from the council who have been of great assistance to this, and in particular to David Armstrong, who finally got things moving for us on this. Also, just quick thanks to colleagues who are on the scrutiny review committee with me. They've been a great help, and also to former councillor Pat Hackett up until he left. Again, he was a great help and contributor to it. So it has taken a long time. We've brought business people, we've brought campervan owners, and we've, most of all, particularly for interest, myself, we've brought members of the public in to give us their side of the story, and so that they've been fully consulted all along, and particular thanks to my ward colleagues as well, and the residents of particularly the Mockbeggar estate in Wallasey. As I say, the problem had been that on some days of the week, didn't matter what day of the week it was, whether it was a sunny weekend or a winter's evening, we could count at sometimes up to 50 plus campervans visiting the area along Coastal Drive, and you'll have the maps in front of you of the areas that we were particularly concerned about. And we realised right from the beginning that clearly residents were particularly perturbed by the number of vans that were visiting there. Quite clearly, there was some information on the internet, both nationally and internationally, advertising this as a wonderful place to come. You didn't have to pay anything. There may be not any facilities there, but it was a nice quiet area to visit. And whilst obviously, you know, we all want to attract people here to enjoy all the fantastic features that we have, we think it's only fair that that shouldn't be at the cost of peace and quiet and a blight on our landscape, which it clearly was becoming. As I say, sometimes there would be 50 plus vans there. Some of them would have a very small vehicle hitched up to the back of them. Obviously, they would park their huge camper vans there all day and then go and visit somewhere in the area and probably far further beyond in their little cars, such as a Fiat 500. That caused particular problems in relation to parking because they were far too long, the vehicles, to park in the usual parking bays down there. And we found that on a number of occasions that they were actually taking up 3 spaces of the disabled parking bays that were down there, and they were parking long ways across them. So there was all sorts of problems. One of them being health and environmental problems. Clearly, they had toilet facilities within their camper vans. The nearby toilets, as you approach from Harrison Drive onto the promenade, were closed for various reasons. And it got quite foul down in the area along Coastal Drive and just before the dips, and particularly near the sailing club, where toilet facilities within the camper vans were actually being emptied out into the green open spaces. That does actually go on still a little bit today, but I'll just come to that later on. As I say, it was advertised all over the place. It's a nice quiet area. It's a dead end. So once they're parked there at night, nobody really goes down there to actually disturb them. There was also, and I have to say it was anecdotal, and I couldn't prove it in a court of law, but I could see for myself what was going on in a number of the camper vans. Somebody was running a business of a mobile tyre repair nature there, and there was some other rather more unsavoury nature of businesses going on with a certain number of females, and I'll leave that for you to draw your own conclusions about what that could be. So clearly something had to be done, and we, as I say, were trying to get the camper vans removed. I was always under the impression that you couldn't sleep in a vehicle overnight on a highway. Apparently the law had changed then. So that didn't enable us to have them removed or even for them to stay there on a time limit. So something was clearly needed. If you look on the websites, and clearly there is some information within the scrutiny review that you'll see about what other councils were doing. Everyone was doing different things, but nobody had actually got an answer to the solution. So it did look then that we would have to be going down the route of looking at getting a traffic regulation order so that the vans didn't park there and stay there literally for weeks on end. We started off, I think it says in the report, in 2017, where we looked at an experimental traffic regulation order. We were always aware that whatever we did there, that would probably cause the issue to snowball further down the promenade into the area of New Brighton. But our biggest fears also was that it could snowball into the nearby residential roads if we weren't careful. So with the help of officers, we eventually got the experimental order, which proved extremely successful. We then had that formalised in the 2020, this last year at the beginning of the year, and it has been exceptionally successful. The issue really is, though, that clearly Wirral, quite rightly, is a place where people want to come and visit, and as I said before, we applaud that. But we have no site within Wirral to accommodate camper vans, and clearly that's perhaps something which we're going to have to look at in the future. And I suppose that will open a huge nest of trouble, because I can imagine there'll be an awful lot of people saying they don't want it in their ward, but perhaps we could do something with our neighbouring authorities so that we can attract people to come to Wirral, to come to Merseyside and enjoy, as I say, the facilities that we have. So extremely important that we have the traffic regulation order formalised, and the situation now is what we experienced in Wallasey Ward is happening in New Brighton Ward. And again, you'll see on the map provided within the papers tonight that they have an experimental order in force at the moment, and probably if all goes the same as what happened in Wallasey Ward, that eventually will be formalised. The problems don't really stop just with this, but that's probably something for another date. But on top of the traffic regulation order that we have in place, we also have a public space protection order on the dips to try to calm the antisocial behaviour that goes on down there from all sorts of members of society. One of the issues as well is a couple of the camper vans do now find themselves parking near to, I don't know if many of you will probably know the area, but the extension of Sea Road from Grove Road, which comes down onto the promenade, and then you're right onto the dips, and also the next road, Sandcliffe Road, which again comes from Grove Road. That doesn't have the benefit of the traffic regulation order, and it may be helpful, Chair, if the committee could perhaps look at that in the future for us to having that small extension. Camper vans are parking there, and again some of the environmental and health issues that we saw further up on Coastal Drive are happening down there. But thank you to all who've contributed on this, and I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, that either yourself or the committee may wish to put to me.
Thanks, Councillor Rennie. Before I open up for questions, I don't know if there's any, if any officers want to come in and add a contribution there. No, okay. It's my understanding that some options papers, Councillor Rennie, are ready to go to the next committee meeting, so we might take a look at that then. But now I'll open it up for any questions or comments to Councillor Rennie. No. Okay, well that was an easy one, Leslie. Okay, so the recommendation for members is to note and agree the recommendations contained within the Campervan Scrutiny Review report of the Business Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and determine what actions to be taken in light of the recommendations. Agree across committee working group in consultation with relevant stakeholders in order to explore alternative off-highway provision with dedicated facilities for motor caravans on Wirral. And just on that, on Councillor Rennie's request, I'd just like to add in that the extension of a TRO happen from Sea Road, extend also from Sea Road off Grove Road, and also what was the other road, Councillor Rennie?
It's Sandcliffe Road.
Sandcliffe Road.
It's the adjacent road to it, both leading down onto the dips from Grove Road.
Okay. I'm sure I can take this item by agreement by assent. So if any member wishes a roll call, do they want to indicate now, or are we happy to agree by assent?
I assent, Chair.
Excellent, thank you. So that's agreed. Thank you, Councillor Rennie, for that contribution.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll move on to item 6, which is the appointment of a members champion for heritage. Members will be aware that the council appoints a heritage champion at annual council to an extremely important role with what we've got in Wirral. And for the past quite a long time, it's been Councillor Jerry Williams, who's done an excellent job. I am happy to nominate Councillor Williams to continue in that role and report to committee and champion of heritage from the borough. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stuart. Can we agree that by assent?
Agreed by
Don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I don't hear any member, so that is agreed. What I'm going to do is ask Councillor Williams just to give a 5-minute update to us on what's been happening previously and what we're looking at in future, and to make recommendations to the committee. So, and then I'll invite questions. So, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Well, I've given a written report to the committee, which basically, highlights everything. But I'm happy to read it out if it's just to, and that would be my report. And I'm obviously very happy to answer any questions too.
I think members have read it. It's been circulated, but I don't know if you just want to highlight any of the key achievements last year and what's coming.
Yeah, I'll just summarise basically what's in the report, Tom. That's fine. Yeah, well, first of all, just again to thank everyone for their support for myself in this role over the years, which has been very much a pleasure. And I, as you all know, I really enjoy doing it. Heritage on the Wirral has been received with great support from members across the political divide. Add to that, the amazing heritage and community groups we have very much put Wirral in an advanced position compared with some of the other authorities. Our visionary work to put Wirral's 60 heritage groups into one organisation, the Wirral History and Heritage Association, was to take on the immense changes to local government. The decision was groundbreaking, and add to that the formation of conservation areas Wirral, and despite difficult conditions, good progress on the establishment of the new conservation areas, also the ongoing success of the Blue Plaque Scheme. Numerous historical events and initiatives have taken place. One stage, our Heritage Open Days were the second largest in the country. Only the City of Lincoln was in front. Then we have the Wirral History and Heritage Fair every year, which is always receives large numbers attending, and a great success. And various initiatives have been achieved with Historic England. The issue is main issues to come forward are based. Are you okay there? Sorry. Main issues to come forward are basically the heritage strategy. There's a need for a heritage strategy, as the need is well recognised. However, due to COVID, even more pressing areas of work are being forced to take priority. In the meantime, officers are soon to commission a joint culture and heritage strategy for the Birkenhead Regeneration Framework, which will deliver transformational change across the Birkenhead urban area. The importance of heritage and the need to respect and celebrate it is reflected in the framework. An important aspect will be the involvement of community and interest groups in the production of the strategy. The wider Wirral Heritage Strategy will follow, which is really important, which previous officer Arlene Wilshaw was halfway through when she left. An up-to-date strategy is needed, as this can attract funding from Historic England. At the moment, heritage officer work has been covered by other staff. Heritage officer role has been costed in future plans, and in fact a decision I think has been made or is imminent about a new officer. And to help us obtain future heritage funding from, again, Historic England. The Blue Plaque Scheme continues to be important for highlighting notable individuals and making stories accessible. The partnership with conservation areas were always a great success. Funding opportunities, any relevant funding opportunities identified by the Culture and Visitor Economy team are being circulated to groups on our Wirral Heritage Network. The Battle of Bruniber, the report from Liverpool University has been updated to take account of additional recent research. A meeting with Wirral Archaeology is scheduled for the 30th of October to provide feedback on the study findings and recommendations and next steps forward. Good progress is being made, and more intelligence in relation to confirming the battlefield site is coming forward. It is all going in the right direction. Street naming has run extremely well for many years. About 7 years ago, a combination of officers and myself developed a no junk street naming policy. This was to ensure road naming road names were in harmony with the community and heritage groups. That this worked superbly well. This was to stop names going through that people did not consider relevant. Some officers left and the reconstructing of departments took place and building control became involved. This caused some initial problems taking place. This has now been addressed, but there are still some issues we are looking at, and I will bring a report to committee on this in the future if that is okay with members. Officers are working with National Museums Liverpool, put Sunlight community groups on diversity issues to make sure inclusive consultations take place. Local listing, following a government initiative in appointing a local listing heritage advisor, Conservation Areas Wirral have asked to be involved with this initiative, who will be urging the council to facilitate a local listing scheme. This protects buildings and landscapes, etc., that are important to the local communities. And that's my report, and I'm obviously happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Jerry. That's really comprehensive, and thanks for everything you've done for the Borough's heritage in the past.
Yeah, thanks,
And
Tom.
we'll
It's a
continue to
pleasure.
do. Are there any comments or questions from members? Okay, I don't see any hands going up. So thanks very much, Jerry. Look forward to working with you over the next year.
That's great, Tom.
Item,
Look forward to working with everyone.
excellent. Item 7 is the budget process. So can I pass over to Nikki Butterworth, our Director of Neighbourhoods, to introduce the report. Nikki.
Thank you, Chair. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you. So thank you, Chair. My name is Nikki Butterworth and I am the Director of Neighbourhood Services, and item 7 on the report tonight, I will be taking you through the committee through the process for the budget setting. So this report takes you through the budget setting as a transition year for 21-22 and describes the financial position as at Q1, which was a deficit of 45 million. It also details the actions being put in place to mitigate that gap. These actions include a phased approach of 5 stages and includes a timeline for the 21-22 budget setting process, where budget proposals are presented to the Policy and Services Committees for the recommendations to full council to set the budget. This is very much a transition year. Proposals are currently being identified and will be presented to the committee by officers due to the tight timescales in this transition year to approve the budget. However, the committee is very much encouraged to identify their own proposals for officers to work up to be included in the 21-22 budget. For future years, this will become the usual process, and throughout the year, the committee will identify proposals for officers to work up for the following year's budget. So in this report, the recommendation is very much that the committee notes the council's current financial position and process for 21-22 in this transition year. There were a few points within the report that I was hoping to highlight with yourselves, namely 3.4, which describes how the deficit is made up, and also 3.6, which shows how we are looking to mitigate this. We are, as the report describes, the council is requesting permission from MHCLG to apply to the Treasury for a capitalisation directive, again to help towards mitigating the budget gap. The following sections of the report cover the resetting of the medium-term financial plan, where there is a forecast budget gap for 21-22 of the 45 million and identifies any unachievable savings and additional costs and pressures within that year. So within the section of 3.12 of the report, this talks to the budget deficit mitigations. So looking at working, officers have been working on identifying options to mitigate the overall deficit. We're working through a programme of immediate actions that can be taken now and longer term actions to ensure the budget is sustainable for the future. The process to set a balanced budget for 21-22 is described in 5 phases within the report, and section 4 of the report shows the timescales for the budget process. It also describes the workshops that will be happening with committees and officers that will take place over the coming weeks and months to work through the budget options and initiatives to bridge the budget gap. The committee are also asked to note that there was a new finance table published last Friday as a supplementary with a note explaining the update, and this table replaces the second table and the graph on page 39 of this report. So at this point, I just want to pass you to our finance business officer, which is Sarah Cox, and she can talk you through the committee's budget position. So if I can pass to Sarah now, please.
Right, so just go through. My name's Sarah Cox. I'm the Finance Business Partner for the Neighbourhoods Directorate. I'm just going to talk you through the finance section of the report in a bit more detail. The budget in the table represents part of the Neighbourhoods Directorate and part of the Regeneration and Place Directorate, so it's split from 2 directorates into this committee. The table has been updated to reflect the forecasts and variances against these budgets as at Q1, because the original table didn't include like forecasts and variances from Q1, so that's been incorporated into the revised version of the table. As at Q1, the tourism and visitor economy was projected at budget, and that might actually change because obviously things have happened since Q1, so that could change. We're working on Q2 at the moment, so those budgets might actually be like more of a variance next time we report. And the overall variance reported against the community engagement section, which is mainly from leisure centres, was projected to be 10.2 million adverse variance as at Q1. The vast majority of that is 9.9 million of the variance relates to leisure, libraries and customer engagements. This area covers the leisure centres, libraries and the floral pavilion. As all income associated with the service ceased on the 23rd of March, there's not been much scope to generate income in these areas this year. That the vast majority of the 9.9 million is due to the income from leisure centres, which makes up 7.5 million of the loss. As at Q1, this was based on the assumption that leisure centres would open in August. The opening in leisure centres was actually delayed a bit beyond this, whilst the air conditioning was being made COVID secure, and this has resulted in the income projection being revised downwards in future quarters. Leisure centres are currently being reopened on a phased basis, with one actually reopened and another one planned to be reopened. Some leisure centres are being utilised for COVID-related activities, meaning their reopening will be delayed for longer. Also within the main part of the income loss in this area was the floral pavilion, which was projecting a loss of 2.2 million as at Q1. And this assumes the service will achieve none of the income targets this year. This is mainly due to the cancellation of the live shows. A small amount of income is still expected from the catering offer, which restarted in August. There are smaller income losses relating to other areas of this service, mainly from the libraries and museums, as it is assumed neither of these services will achieve their income targets this year. The remainder of the 10.2 million overspend relates to 295,000, and this is from income from community patrol contracts that have been lost in previous years. That's an adverse variance due to income loss, but that wasn't related to COVID. Within the leisure services, there was a capital programme that were planned to improve income generation in leisure, and these are temporarily on hold due to COVID. There may be plans to recommence them later in the financial year when the capital programme is reviewed. And in addition to this, there is plans to claim some of the lost income back from the government's income loss compensation scheme, as at the moment it's still being worked on as to how much income has been lost, and we're claiming it back on for a monthly basis. So the actual figure that we're able to claim back is still under review, but that's something to just note. And that's all as a summary from the quarterly report for this committee. So just has anybody got any questions?
Yeah, just before we go to questions, Nikki, have you got anything to add on? Have you taken items 7 and 8 together, or?
I was just going to do item, the next item after any questions on this.
Yeah. We'll take the items as they are then separately. So just on item 7 on the budget process, I've seen hands up and questions in the chat bar. So I saw them as Councillor Brian Kenny first, and then Councillor Helen Cameron. So Brian, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's on the question of a balanced budget. As I understand it, we need to introduce a balanced budget, but we could either get further funding from government, and if not, we've got to take steps ourselves within the council. But what sort of timescale is laid down for that? For example, if we as a council approach the government and say we need X money off you to help balance our budget, presumably there's some sort of obligation upon them to reply by a certain time, because if we don't get an early response, then as a council we're then rushing around perhaps at the last minute to try and find some measures which will give us a balanced budget. So can we have some clarification on any timescale on that process, please? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kenny. Sarah or Nikki, do you want to answer that question?
There is a timescale in the actual report which maps out when we usually get our annual settlement, which is usually the early December. We, along with many other councils, because it's a very unique and challenging year, obviously with the budget and the pandemic, are looking to try and get as early indication of what that settlement will be like, but it is usually the beginning of December, and to that effect, that's what's mapped out in the budget process and the timescales of the report.
I suppose that's why the 5, 10 and 15% contingencies have been requested to accommodate that timescale. But the other questions I've got from Councillor Cameron and then Councillor Johnson. So Helen, do you want to go first?
Hi. Yes, obviously we had the supplementary issued with, well, I would say it's quite a significant shift from 7 to 10, but this is all still Q1 based. So we've got these workshops coming on. When will we get to see a 6+6? Because if we keep looking at the 3+9 in such a strange year, we won't even, it's October now, and the 6+6 might resolve some issues and it might exacerbate others. But we are being presented with data with Q1 actuals and the rest of the forecast and variances to budget. So that's my first question about, 6+6 will be really handy for the workshops if possible. And also on page 40, 0.5.6, the capital budget, that's copy pasted in from the Environment Committee report. So is it probably because it's all neighbourhoods and it's hard to split out, or can it be rephrased? It just is exactly identical to the table in the Environment report. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Cameron. That's all spotted. Nikki?
Well, can I ask Sarah to pick up on this point? Because the team are working on the following quarter's budgetary information. So if she can update on that, and also the issue that you write, Councillor Cameron's highlighted around the environment table that's in there, which is an error, but it's because it's part of our neighbourhood services. So if I just pass to Sarah to confirm around the latest position and what will be available at the workshops.
Yeah, the quarterly reports, the quarter 2 report, that's being worked up. It's ready and been worked up over the last week. So that is actually ready. It just needs to be agreed by the Director of Finance before it can actually be discussed. But we can actually discuss it at the workshops next week and can make it available. Based on some of the areas, some of them we've actually assumed full budget loss for the year for libraries, museums and the floral pavilion. So based on quarter 2, they'll be likely to be staying similar because they were based on assumptions that the services wouldn't open for the rest of the year when we produce quarter 1. So as that's not actually changed in quarter 2, we've just based it on the same figures. And with the leisure centres, that's actually gone increased partially because originally we were assuming the leisure centres would be at least partly reopened from August and getting some of the income in, but as the reopening stages have been like a bit obviously like more phased and delayed, then obviously the projected income for the year is obviously reduced. So we're looking at a figure nearer to 7.8 million for Q2, which is still being finalised. So instead of 7.5, we're looking nearer 7.8 as a projection. And as for the tourism and visitor economy, that was put to budget. So I'd need to check with my colleagues about that one because it doesn't fall into the neighbourhoods directorate. So we'll need to check with that one to see exactly how much likely whether that will actually come in at budget or whether the quarterly reports will produce like a different figure. But we'll be able to finalise that before the workshops next week. And
great, that's great. Thanks. We can have it for the workshop, which is ideal. But just on the capital budget, can we see for this area a table that represents for this committee that makes sense as opposed to the
I think why the other one was copied and pasted in it was just based on the whole of the neighbourhoods directorate, so the same table was used for both committees. So
okay, so that's the total for both combined.
Yeah, because Q1 they didn't actually report it on a committee basis, so that's why it's just the same table. What we can work to split it out.
Yeah, just the title. That's it. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Councillor Johnson, Jenny.
Thank you. Yes, just looking, Councillor Jerry Williams just said recently there that there's a proposed heritage officer role in the plan to increase funding ideally from Historic England, and that makes great sense to increase the funding, but surely we shouldn't be looking at internal extra cost at this point in time when the budget's so tight. Surely we should be thinking, can we not have somebody within the council, I'm sure there must be people who can do this as perhaps part of their role instead. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Johnson.
Would you like me to reply to that? Would you like me to make a comment on that?
I don't think. Well, I mean, it's a point to think. I don't think it's a point that officers can take on board rather than discuss staffing issues.
And I'd just confirm this. If I can just confirm that this is exactly the work and the points that we discuss at those workshops as well. Yeah,
I think that's a great point for the workshop. So I don't see any more hands up, or does anyone else want to comment or ask a question? Okay, so for item 7 then only, and the recommendation is that the committee notes the council's current financial position and the process for the 2021-22 budget in this transition year. I can take it that we can agree that by assent. Excellent. Okay. Item 8 then is the budget and performance monitoring report. I'll pass back over to Nikki Butterworth, our Director of Neighbourhoods, to introduce it. Nikki.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a short report around our proposed approach for working with the committee around shaping future performance monitoring reports. As a new committee system is implemented, we wanted to ensure that robust and clear performance monitoring is in place. The new performance reports will be developed and regularly presented to this committee. We anticipate there'll be a range of indicators to give the committee a meaningful overview of key areas that are of interest to the committee and part of the terms of reference for you as committee members to undertake your roles. And it's anticipated that the performance framework is modelled on the COVID dashboard that we established at the start of the coronavirus pandemic, which has been very well received by all members and our local MPs. This will enable clear and accessible data to be presented in a timely and meaningful way. And also the report proposes that the committees help shape and agree what measures that you as a committee would like to see included. It's a very wide-ranging committee, this, and there'll be a wide range of data sets that could be included in the dashboards. And I think the dashboards will also include indicators to show progress on the work programme for this committee and the Wirral plan for 2025. This plan for the Wirral 2025 is currently being refreshed to reflect the COVID impact and align with the emerging recovery plans. And this will also allow new performance measures to be developed to enable meaningful reports to progress towards delivery of that plan. I'd anticipate further discussions will take place in the next few weeks with committees, chair and spokes to agree those specific measures that the committee would like to see reported on. And we would see this process as being quite iterative. So as more data becomes available, and this is a new committee, so what you want now, you may decide you want something different or more of in 6-12 months time, and we encourage that and would want to work as officers with the committee to develop the dashboards. So there is a recommendation with this report is that members note the proposals outlined in the report for shaping the future performance monitoring report, and that further discussions can take place with the committee chair and group spokespersons early in November, so that we can start shaping the monitoring reports for future committees. Thank you, Chair.
Great. Thank you, Nikki. Just on this, I don't know if the recommendations have been mixed up in terms of budget and performance, but I've also been given a further recommendation, that they go to P&R regarding the budget workshops. So I would like to move, when appropriate, that any budget workshop discussions come to this committee before being submitted to P&R, but I'll do that formally after I've taken questions and comments. So I've got a hand up from Councillor Cameron. Helen?
Hi. Yes, looking forward to all of those KPIs and working going forward, but just currently there is a wealth of information from the Liverpool City region on the visitor economy, and they're desperately trying to update that because it's so changed recently. Is that something they readily share with you already? Is it something we're going to have to add on, or are you seeing that already, and is it helping you to understand the impact?
Good question. Nikki, can you?
I think on that one, I think we can have a look at those data sets, but I would like to take that away to speak to Alan Evans and Sally Shaw, that are the leads on the tourism and the visitor economy and culture, service areas really, and neither of them are here this evening, but that's fine, Councillor Cameron. Okay. I'll take that away and pick up. No problem.
That's a great suggestion. Any other members want to comment or ask a question? No. Okay. So we've got our legal officer on.
Yes. So you need for me to have a seconder for your motion, Chair.
Yeah. So I will read out the motion as is, just so that the committee chair and group spokes meet in early November to discuss the outcomes of the committee workshop on the 2nd of November and the P&R workshops on performance and budget reports. I would just like to further add that committee requires final budget proposals come to this full committee before being submitted to P&R. So I'd like a seconder for that.
I'll second that, Chair. Councillor Povall.
Thank you, Councillor Povall. Helen, you've got your hand up. Is there a reason?
Sorry, that was legacy.
Okay. Do members want to agree this by assent or have a roll call?
Happy for it to be agreed by assent, Chair.
Great. Thank you. So I don't see any objections or for a roll call, so if we can agree that by assent, thank you, members. Item number 9 is the committee work programme. That's been all circulated in your packs. You'll see a number of key decisions that are coming up. Group spokes and chair and myself met a couple of weeks ago to discuss what items we want on the work programme. I see this as an organic and fluid document, so if members want items to be raised throughout the year, please do indicate via your group spokes or come to me directly. It's up for this committee to decide what we have on there, bearing in mind key decisions and what's in the forward plan, but I very want it to be a collaborative approach. I'm just going to look now. There's another hand up. Oh, Colin, I don't know if you've got a legacy hand up.
Oh yes, I have. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Don't worry.
Sorry.
So if members are content, can we agree the recommendation that's disappeared from my pack? There we go. So we can note and agree. Well, first of all, is there any questions or comments on the work programme? Does anyone?
Yes. And again, you'll need a formal second. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you. So the recommendations there that members note and agree the committee's work programme for the remainder of the year. That's been seconded by Councillor Stuart. Take it we can agree that by assent. Excellent. So that's agreed. That concludes the business for this committee. I've been not notified of any other business. So with that, I wish members a pleasant evening. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
Tom.
you, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.